like
give it
debating
away,
me
Shadow the
and
Hedgehog is not
Roblox
a game I hold in high esteem.
Metal
Despite the
Sonic.
fact that it was the first 3D
It's
Sonic game I
Last
ever
of
played, it is
All.
not a game I enjoy playing now because of all the reasons I mentioned in my review of it from 2020. It doesn't control well, its structure is the most repetitive of all the 3D Sonic games, and the writing is laughably try-hard and nonsensical at the same time.
Chaos Emerald? You gotta be kidding me, guys. This is like taking candy from a baby, which is fine by me.
Side note, this is also the first major English recast in the game. Shadow
He's
the
fine
Hedgehog
with
brings in
taking
the voices
candy
the
from a
Sonic
baby.
X show for each character, replacing the entire cast that debuted in Sonic Adventure. You get used to it for a while. However, none of that matters for this video because something doesn't have to be good to be a canon part of the saga. So,
No.
what was Shadow the Hedgehog all about? Well, as you recall, Sonic Heroes ended with it still being a mystery as to whether or not Shadow was the real Shadow of Adventure 2 or a robotic copy of him. I think there's plenty of evidence in Heroes that supported him being the real deal. For one, his personality was intact when bantering with Rouge and Omega, and even Sonic, despite his fractured memory.
Mine's over the will, and I have to try to stop you
Why?
because I shattered the hedgehog.
And Eggman also thought it was important enough to
Shadow
use
the
a robot
hedgehog,
for
but I
Omega
still
to guard
care
the
for
Shadow,
the
separate from all those other
entire
clones being mass produced.
Just because
So regardless, the
I
Shadow
was
game arrived a year later to answer all the questions, but in a bizarre fashion. Shadow was pretty clearly a good person at heart, just very misguided in SA2 for reasons I went into. Sonic Heroes showing him he's not evil at all. Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, used the fact that Shadow was mostly known as an anti-hero, combined with his amnesia to tell this story that was marketed around choosing
Which is
whether or not
different than
Shadow
Team
was going to be
Metal
a hero, a villain, or neither. Which I just find to be a misuse of this character, but here's how it goes. Every playthrough of Shadow begins at a level Westopolis, where an army of evil aliens called the Black Arms have invaded the Earth, and their leader, Black Doom, claims to know who Shadow is, and that he owes them the Chaos Emerald. In the stage, Shadow must either help Black Doom wipe out the gun troops, find the Chaos Emerald for himself, or help Sonic fend off the Black Arms. Doing one of these three
But
things
Sonic
will take
thinks
you
he's
to
not a
every
real
stage,
Sonic.
and the story
Yeah,
plays out
but it's
completely
still on
differently
your
depending on
team.
what you do as you eventually reach one of the 6 final levels where you have to definitively
I want
pick a hero
Sonic
mission or a
he's
dark
not real.
mission where you get one of 2 endings from that stage,
Yes,
creating a total of 10 possible
But
endings.
he's not part of the
Writing
canon.
out like that sounds pretty cool,
real,
but in
doesn't
practice,
mean
the
we
issue with
can't
Shadow
do
is that the writers
That's
just
what
isn't there to back it up. Each stage goes
That's
separate.
exactly what that
connected
means.
to what choices you made before, creating a very disjointed plot where it's impossible to see all the major events in one
Oh,
playthrough,
okay.
but then all the major events are canon at the
I
same
thought we were
time.
trying to make it as
Meaning that I can't
official
tell
as
you what the
possible.
most canon path of Shadow is, as there really isn't one.
Yeah,
So I'll
that's
go over what important
those
bullet points are
characters
contained
on
in the campaign of Shadow the Hedgehog. I
are
already
Team
mentioned
Metal
that Black
Sonic.
Doom knows who
I'm
Shadow is
Shadow,
and the
so
past
I'm
with him that
Team
even the
Shadow,
audience is not aware
and
of.
I
But
have
then you have this newly
and
introduced commander of
Omega's on my
guns with a
team,
vendetta
and
against Shadow
Rouge
for a
is on
mysterious reason that isn't revealed until you reach the stage Cosmic Fall, where he corners Shadow at the Ark, revealing that he was once friends with Maria before she died. Her death being the only concrete thing Shadow can remember at this point. The commander, who's not given a name in the game, reveals that he witnessed Professor Gerald creating Shadow with the aid of Black Doom, whose alien blood was exactly what the professor needed in order to give Shadow the immortality I mentioned before. The commander blames Shadow's existence for Gunn's raid on the Ark and the death of Maria. Besides that, the story is full of all kinds of bits and pieces that become relevant at some point or another, like how Black Doom informed Shadow at the stage's Blizzard Canyon that Sky Troops, their floating fortress, was planted on Earth's temple ground thousands of years ago to be risen when they eventually came back to their native Earth. And that they resided in an asteroid-looking thing called
The
the Black
government?
Comet, which passes by the Earth every 50 years. I'm not sure why now was the right time to invade, but still, here we are. Also, Eggman told Shadow at some point that he's a robot fake, not the real
So
Shadow.
an
I say
imposter
that not
of a
only because
Hitman
it's all
person.
one void. With the different pathways and 10 total endings, there are in fact 326 possible combinations for how to get from the start of the game to these 10 endings, and most of them are disjointed nonsense. But we don't have to worry about that, because getting multiple endings of Shadow unlocks a fully canon last story mode, where it turns out that none of the possible endings happen at all, and were merely what-if scenarios. Because this last story
Yeah,
segment
I'm
begins
working
after
for the
Shadow
violence
is
right now.
all set in chaos in the hopes of using them to regain his memory. Where Black Doom then uses them for his final plan, using chaos control to warp the Black Comet down to the surface of the Earth,
Pluto.
harvesting humans for the continued survival of the Black Comet. Apparently, Professor Gerald has heard of Black Doom and tried to Shadow.
Probably just does
Indeed,
Sonic
Shadow
stuff.
would gather the 7 Emeralds to
But-
help Black
but
Doom with
being
his
out of
final
metal.
plan. But
Yeah,
Gerald was actually a
but
good person
he
back then, so he had a backup plan. Throughout the campaign, Shadow was pretty chaotic up until
Why?
the refused to disclose. And in the last story, it's revealed by the chaotic that Gerald's plan to deal with the Black Arms was that Shadow would, when the time came, use the Eclipse Cannon on the Ark to destroy the Black Comet before the Black Arms could take over the Earth. Then, after Shadow left the raid, Gerald went insane and created his own plan to destroy the Earth. Black Doom be damned, I guess. Upon remembering Maria's wish to give hope to humanity, becomes Super Shadow to battle against Black Doom's final form, Devil Doom, to save the Earth. Minutes before the Earth is overrun by the Black Ark, while the rest of the cast roots him from below. The biggest slap in the face of all is that this boss fight takes like 4 minutes max, but the developers snuck in the biggest detail of the whole game for players who wait until the 9-minute mark. At that moment, Eggman will chime in and say
He's
this.
taking the
Shadow, can you hear me?
shadow thing. So.
This might be the last chance I have to
And
speak
here
to
it
you, so what I said about having faith in you, it was all a lie.
Oh God.
Everyone died
The
during
reason
that
I'm
war.
surviving right now is because
But I
of
read
this wooden dummy. It's immune to chaos
you lost
energy.
your memory, that's all. You really are the ultimate life form, my
I
crying
put down a
poetry.
million
Yeah,
of
this shadow is the real one from SA2, not a cheat
and
thing. I don't know why they took such an important detail so far in most players' reach, but here we are. Once the final battle is beaten, Super Shadow uses Chaos Control to bring the comet back to outer space, where the Eclipse Cannon is used to blow it to
I'm
smithereens.
so
and keep
powerful
all
that
the world
I'm
rejoicing.
choosing not to
With the
listen
truth
to the
about
government
Gerald
and
to destroy the comet and the true
Because it's
peaceful
immune to
intentions of
chaos
Shadow
energy.
being broadcast to the entire world, Professor Gerald's legacy is rewritten as someone who was dealt an extremely bad hand by Gunn, and so the President pledges alongside the Gunn Commander to try and right the wrongs of the past and make peace with Shadow, someone who has fully regained his memories. Content with everything, knowing that he'll continue to uphold Maria's wish of protecting the Earth at all costs, and making Shadow the Hedgehog. Honestly, when reflecting on it, the story doesn't even sound that bad, especially with how it tries to fill in the blanks of the series, like why the Eclipse Cannon even exists at all. Giving him a firm direction to take Shadow's character in for future games, however, that's just me presenting the Cliff Notes version of the story.
What is
You
this?
still have to do 10 playthroughs of Shadow, marred by things that don't make sense, are hardly connected, and more often than not, do things for pure shock value in the hopes of looking more mature than it actually is. However, like I said, I suppose that doesn't matter when looking at it through the lens of canonicity, but it's worth mentioning how I think this game is not very good. It does look at a lot of these ideas, but in execution it just feels like fan fiction.
After I
But we'll
do
place it on the timeline right after Sonic Heroes.
I can't
I
do
mentioned
it.
before that on the same day that Sonic Heroes released, fans were treating Sonic Battle on the Game Boy Advance. This is another game I'm not very fond of.
Oh my
Sonic
God.
definitely has the
Time. This
character
is
model
like a
as
big
a fighting
weakness.
game, even by 2004. However, the problem is that it was a fighting game on the Game Boy Advance. It only had 4 buttons, really holding back the potential of the combat quite a lot. If that was the
Only
worst
used
that
as
it was
emergency?
playing too much, this game is the most bloated Sonic game to ever exist, including a full storyline for Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, Cream, and Shadow, plus a final story. Packed full of dialogue and repetitive battles that last an eternity and oftentimes feel like they were designed to bottleneck players. But at least
Hey, I
in this
just
game's
played
case,
that
the story's
day,
actually pretty good.
Yes,
No,
you
no,
did.
again, when you
I
take
don't
the GBA
remember
Sonic
all
fighting
the
game as a cool
characters
story.
in it.
It begins with Dr. Eggman
They're
trying
all
to
in.
control a new mech. This one he read about Professor Gerald's diary and called a Gizzoid. But since it doesn't respond to anything the doctor has infinite wisdom, this tosses the Gizzoid into the ocean and as it washes on shore for Sonic to find. Sonic and friends learn that the Gizzoid started out as a complete blank slate, and insert chaos emeralds into it and will grow in consciousness and strength, developing a full personality after just a couple of them. They call him Emerald because he's powered by chaos. One of Emerald's strongest abilities is that he can see the actions and behaviors of others and copy them perfectly, which translates to the game as you can mix and match the light and heavy combo attacks of other characters to transform Emerald into the strongest character in the game, picking only the best, most powerful moves from the rest of the cast. Emerald is the main character of Sonic Battle. I think his story is seen through the perspective of all the other characters, as Emerald forms bonds with each and every single one. Like how he pokes fun at Knuckles, that's what he sees Sonic doing, or how he protects Cream from these mass-produced gamma robots, and she, in turn, does the same for him. Shadow
You'll never stop me from destroying the world by beating up this dummy.
The rest of the cast, that Gizzoid was a robot meant for destruction and war, and that's why he was shut down.
But I
This leads to
still
a
want
lot of
to
good
pay off
moments, like when Sonic reminds Shadow that his purpose was once to destroy, and look at him now. Eventually, Shadow learns to trust Emerald enough to give him his Chaos Emerald, and that's what Emerald needs to
Chaos
use
Control.
mass power. In the end, Eggman gains the upper hand with his new Death Egg, as his plan was to use his energy to overload Emerald and awaken his true destructive power. Which leads to a bittersweet final boss, as Sonic has to fight against the overpowered Emerald that the whole game building up. Activating Gerald's failsafe for weapons, where if they go out of control, they'll self-destruct, leaving the cast in mourning over the loss of Emerald, someone they regarded as a true friend
The
before
robots
it became
are the wooden
and
dummy
unlike
bot.
Shadow, Emerald was never
It absorbs all chaos energy.
Many people fondly remember about this game. Now, as for the canon discussion, it largely revolves around Shadow. His appearance at all is obviously why it's after Heroes, as the mention of Omega. But then, I don't know if this was just a mistake someone made when writing this game, but Shadow and Sonic Battle was everything about Maria and the Professor that happened in Adventure 2. So for that reason, it would have to go after Shadow the Hedgehog, where the amnesia plot is resolved. Although it's not worth mentioning that it is later explained explained in the game Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood that the Izoids were also a product of the ancient Echidna clan. And this would explain why Gerald even researched Izoids, because he was a researcher of Echidna lore. However, one of the hardline actually drawn to Sonic Encyclopedia book is that Sega officially considers the Dark Brotherhood as non-canonical. It was an RPG developed by BioWare for the DS back in 2008, but this game had a big legal problem for Sega as one of the former Sonic comic writers got the usage of Echidna characters outside of ones already existing in the game to his copyrighted material and felt the Dark Brotherhood infringed upon it and then sued, and this ended in a stalemate. And with the statute of limitations expired, the only way to reopen the case would be if Sega ever used things from Sonic Chronicles again, and so the Dark Brotherhood is now a game Sega would like you to forget. Fine by me, it ended on a cliffhanger anyway, which is not something I will more in the story, as we'll see later in this timeline series. I'm spending this time on the Dark Brotherhood now during the Sonic Battle segment because it's the only natural point to mention that little bit about Gizoid lore. I'd like to believe that info about Gizoids and Echidnas can still be headcanon, even if that game is thoroughly dishonest. Moving right along, we finally have reached Sonic Advance 3. This is another one of the earliest Sonic games I played, and it's one of my favorites to this day. Removing the multiple character campaign from previous Advance games, and instead doing one larger campaign where you pick what characters you want to play in teams of two, getting to play as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Cream. One character being the one you play as, and the other one being your support character who you can call upon for tag action. It was a lot of fun. It created a lot of room for experimentation and replay value. The plot for this one's pretty simple, being a game focused on the gameplay, but it does have some lore ties. Eggman uses Chaos Control to turn the world into 7 pockets of reality, and it's up to Sonic and friends to gather signals and turn things back to normal. All that's pretty standard fare, but what's new is Eggman's latest robotic companion. In Sonic Battle, Eggman had already tried
Well, you're using all your powers
now.
now.
It's really a real thing.
Because as long as you keep doing this, this machine
Sonic
will
into
keep healing
against
you.
General, who can merge with machinery, like Eggman often gets seen throughout the game. But it seems like Eggman can't catch a break from robots turning on him as General steals the Chaos Emeralds with the altar of the Master Emerald and uses them to reach his ultimate form. Sonic and becoming Super Sonic and directly teaming up with Dr. Eggman to defeat General. And we get a pretty cute resolution to the Emerald storyline in the ending, as we see that General was later recovered by Cream, who brought him to Tails so to reprogram him to become something like the robot they once knew, and that's exactly what happens. General was never seen again in the games past Sonic Advance 3, but I think it was really cool how this game had played off the storyline of Sonic Battle, giving that a bit of closure as they made the final Sonic platformer like the end. As for where we go from here, I figured I'd take the time now to address the Sonic Riders series. These are spin-off racing games where Sonic and crew race on hoverboards called Extreme Gear. Sonic Riders 1 is one of my favorite Sonic games, definitely my favorite spin-off the series has ever done. It's just so cool when it picks up a ramps and such with fast-moving hoverboards. It feels perfectly in style with the Sonic the Hedgehog. The sequel, Zero Gravity, never appealed to me as much as the automated gameplay. And the last part about Sonic 3 Riders and Xbox Connect, the best. Still probably the most miserable fun I've had playing the game, but hey, the video is fun.
That was the worst game I've ever played in my life.
The Riders series is definitely taken as canon, as the Tales Tube videos and the official Sonic social media
How are you gonna
mentioned their events
cross it
before.
out?
The Babylon Rogues introduced in the Riders games also become characters in the comics. However, when I conceptualized this video, I decided to de-canonize them for my headcanon simply because I felt like it was really weird to just have these hoverboard adventures filled with their own story and lore tossed in alongside the main series. Not that goofy side adventures haven't been included before, but then there's the whole vibe and aesthetic of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles in sportswear before they even get hoverboards. And then Eggman being the CEO of a corporation with a battling gun just feels clashing. Not like he keeps his world-dominating interests a secret. Well, I guess it's possible, but it feels out of place. However, minor spoilers for a minor detail of Sonic Frontiers, skip to this point to get past it. The Babylonians are mentioned by name in a text blurb from Eggman and Frontiers, canonizing the Riders games officially. Well, the first two at least. It seems Sega has also disowned Free Riders, and it doesn't get a chapter in the encyclopedia. While I'm here, I might as well mention that Frontiers also canonizes Tangle from the IDW comics as well, and even states that Sid the Badger from the Sonic Boom universe does exist in the Prime universe. Frontiers also mentions things I discussed in this video, like how Eggman did indeed begin calling himself that at spite for Sonic, and how he never knew Maria. So I was talking about Sonic Riders. I couldn't work it in if I wanted to, since the timeline animation you've been seeing was made months ago before this revolution. So now my stance on Riders is that it is canon, I guess, and you can place it wherever you see fit, and I don't have room to work it into mine. Now, what is
Yes,
Sonic the Hedgehog, released on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in 2006. This game is only referred to by fans, and at this point, officially by Sega, as Sonic 06, and that's what we shall call it for the rest of the video. Now, many people are probably thinking, what the... Isn't that supposed to be a reboot that failed? Well, not quite. I believe that idea is a misunderstanding of something Yuji Naka said in one of in the game. He likened their intention to Batman Begins, Spider-Man 2. Batman Begins obviously being a reboot of film continuity, which is why they thought their intentions were to wipe the slate clean. But he also mentioned Spider-Man 2, which is the sequel. So what he meant was that he wanted the first Sonic game on next-gen hardware to be a big, spectacular blockbuster. Of course, this didn't go as intended. Sonic 06 is one of the most infamous video games of all time, as it was released in a thoroughly unfinished state with bugs and frustrating gameplay galore. It's quite tragic, honestly. This game wanted to do something big and delivered upon none of it thanks to its rushed development and mismanagement, forever tarnishing the reputation of Sonic Team and the Sonic franchise as a whole. However, what is the story, and how does it fit into the larger series? Well, Sonic 06 is a time travel plot with 3 character campaigns, meaning it won't be easy to explain, but I'll do my best, as if this video wasn't long enough already. Sonic 06 is split into 3 campaigns, one for Sonic, another for Shadow, and then for the newcomers, Silver the Hedgehog. Let's begin with Shadow's story. The game takes place in the country of Soliana, as Shadow the Hedgehog is seen raiding Dr. Eggman's mountain base nearby. Shadow is now fully deputized agent of Gun, having really made peace with his past with Shadow's team, as the president and the Gun commander were equally interested in that. It makes sense to me. Shadow's goal is to ensure peace on Earth, and why not do that as an agent where he has all the benefits of being civilian, including Rouge? It makes sense that Shadow and Omega follow Rouge as being Gun agents, giving them something to do in these stories that's different from the main cast. Especially since Sonic Battle shows how Shadow is kind of aimless without a goal to achieve. Anyway, Shadow was raiding this base by order from the president to search for Rouge, who was sent here to locate of the Scepter of Darkness that the Doctor got his hands on.
For now, until I figure out what to do with it.
Eggman at Kingdom Valley, the ruins of the old Soliana castle that got decimated after a failed experiment called the Solaris Project. The ensuing fight caused the Scepter to smash onto the ground, releasing an evil spirit within that takes the form of Shadow's Shadow and introduces himself as Mephiles the Dark, who clearly holds a deep grudge against Shadow, despite him having no idea who this is. Mephiles then just teleporting Shadow and Rouge hundreds of years into the future as they need to find a way back. This future is the home of Silver the Hedgehog, a telekinetic hedgehog who can fly and lift objects with his mind. The world has been utterly ravaged by a fire demon called
We're talking about Silver the Hedgehog.
His friend Blaze the Cat fight against on the regular, never being able to kill it for good, until one day, a mysterious black hedgehog called Mephiles the Dark convinces Silver that it's entirely possible to travel back in time with Mephiles to get freed and kill the person responsible for unleashing him, to the astonishment of Silver, who is desperate to save his home. The Iblis trigger is Sonic the Hedgehog, as Silver and Blaze are sent back in by Mephiles to kill this guy. Beginning Sonic's story when he was the Soliana to enjoy the Festival of the Sun, run by the current monarch of Soliana, Princess Elise III, until Dr. Eggman arrives to capture the princess and unlock the secrets of the Flames of Disaster, until Sonic comes in to save the day. Eventually running into Silver, who tries to kill Sonic, but he's saved by Haley, who met and befriended Silver before seeing him want to murder Sonic, giving Silver pause for thought on whether or not he's doing the right thing here. Sonic's whole campaign being a wild goose chase of Sonic rescuing the princess and wishing her to get recaptured and re-rescued repeatedly as he comes to learn the fact that Eggman is after Elise because of something related to the Solaris Project failure, trying to recreate the experiment himself to control time, which is tested on Team Sonic, sending them hundreds of years to the future where Shadow and Rouge are currently trapped. As the 5 of them team up to find 2 Chaos Emeralds and escape this doomed future. Shadow remarks the sensation of time travel felt like chaos control, and they could try using that to find a way back home. Along the way, Shadow and Rouge run into a run down Omega, unable to bring him back online, and thus leaving him behind for the time being. As Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Rouge make it back to the present, Shadow hangs back after seeing Mephiles once again, who reveals to Shadow that once the world was destroyed by Iblis, the people decided to blame Shadow for it, fearing his destructive power once more and stealing him away again. But Shadow hears none of it and fights Mephiles, only to be backed up by a fully online Omega. Time travel logic starts getting really bizarre here. I mean, you already have the fact there exist 2 versions of Mephiles in the story. The Mephiles that Shadow accidentally unleashed is the present version of the character, and the one that tells Silver he needs to kill Sonic is Mephiles from the future. Something the game never really explains. Is this something you can extrapolate given the different temperaments and slightly altered designs between the 2 versions of Mephiles? Upon looking into that fact more, I found absolutely no sources that backed it up whatsoever. It is pure headcanon from my perspective, although it does make sense to me. So I'm going to keep saying it. But I figured I'd clarify that before continuing. Now back to time traveling shenanigans. Then you have the fact that the reason Omega was shut down in the future was that once Rouge returned to the present day, she realized Shadow was still in the future and found Omega, giving him a Chaos Emerald and instructing him to give it to Shadow once the time arises. But then his future version of Omega travels back to the present with Shadow, which would then mean that 2 Omegas are in the present now. Unless the original Omega immediately shut down for hundreds of years. but the story never explains that sort of thing. This plot feels more rushed than any game prior to it. I mean, have you seen how the game turned out? This plot reeks of it being a first draft. However, I still think a lot of the ideas here are really interesting. Like how, despite the title of the game being Sonic the Hedgehog, the main characters of this game are Shadow, Silver, and Princess Elise. Sonic is a pretty static character throughout the story, his entire goal from beginning to end being rescuing her without question, not even really caring why Eggman is doing what he's doing, just feeling it's probably best. Teaching Elise, a sheltered person devoid of friends and family, what it's like to live a little and become a bit more decisive, or how Silver has a complete arc here too. He begins the game naive enough to trust Mephiles to where he wants to kill Sonic, but he's a really kind-hearted person at heart, just really misguided. He and Blaze are reminded of the urgency of killing Sonic by Mephiles once they start to ask questions about what exactly is going to happen if they don't. But at this exact moment is when Shadow learns from Eggman that the story of Mephiles goes back to the Solaris project from 10 years ago. Shadow saves Sonic from Silver and learns that he's being tricked by Mephiles as Shadow urges Silver to follow him into the past and learn what really happened. The people of Soliana worship their sun god, Solaris. The Duke of Soliana sought to control the power of Solaris to go back in time and stop his wife, Elise's mother, from dying. Something that can't be done by conventional time travel, clearly, as going forward and backwards through time with chaos control can't actually alter the natural course of events. Case in point, Shadow Silver traveling back to this moment to witness the experiment's failure. Killing the researchers and mortally wounding the Duke as he was protecting Elise from the blast. The failure of the experiment split Solaris into two pieces. The mind becomes the black shadow of Mephiles, and the power of Solaris becomes the flame of disaster, Iblis. The Duke gives Shadow the scepter of darkness that he uses to steal Mephiles away. This being the moment that Mephiles met Shadow, and why he has a vendetta against him earlier in the story when Shadow had never heard of him before. Silver tracks down Iblis and sees the Duke steal it inside of Elise, and for whatever reason, Iblis will be released if Elise ever stops. Hence why she's so emotionally shut down at the start of Sonic's story. Dr. Eggman knows Iblis resides in Elise, but doesn't know how to awaken her. Mephiles did so, which is why he had wanted Silver to kill Sonic, since his death might be the thing to drive Elise over the edge. Mephiles' goal in the present day is to awaken Iblis and merge back with him to become Solaris once again before Iblis becomes a giant monster in his own right, I presume. Silver feels bad for the young Elise, having lost both of her parents at this point, giving her a chaos emerald he found earlier in the story, which is why she has one at the beginning of Sonic's playthrough as well. As he and Shadow return to the present, Silver teams up with Sonic to try and stop Eggman and rescue Elise again, and Shadow knowing he needs to try and use the scepter to stop Mephiles once more. The third act of Shadow's story is one of the most fondly remembered parts of this game. Team Dark's loyalty is shaken a bit as Mephiles reveals that in the future it was Omega given the job of stealing Shadow away, which visibly hurts Shadow to think about, but the team's going to remain intact without question.
Shadow? Even if you believe everyone in the world will be against you, know that I'll always remain by your side. Remember that.
So is Rouge like him or what?
I don't know.
They hunt Mephiles down at Dusty Desert, who once again tries telling Shadow the futility of fighting if people are going to betray him. But it's moments like this that make Shadow so great in 06. His character's been dealing with mistaken identity in so many of his games, even SA2. In 06, he's got no worries about the past as a result of the Shadow game, nor does he fear the future, which is why he still fully trusts his teammates. And he's going to do what's right despite Mephiles, who is now so powerful that he can't just contain the scepter. Surrounding the team with an army of Mephiles clones, so Shadow has to use his true ultimate power, ending Shadow's story with the character's coolest moment of all time.
Why risk your life for
We'll
those
never
who
eat that.
persecute you later?
Like,
Lord Jesus, be my enemy. I fight like I always have.
So that's not to say the other characters don't have cool moments to cap off their stories. Sonic and Silver fail to save Elise as she and Eggman die on board the new egg carrier as it inexplicably crashes. Sonic realizes that he can go back in time once more, just a little bit, to undo it. Sonic raiding the lab Eggman's occupying where the experiment went wrong 10 years ago and boards the egg carrier before it takes off and defeats the Doctor, saving the day. Probably his coolest moments in the game as he's pretty no-nonsense in the last string of cutscenes. Silver and Blaze return to their home, which is still a fiery hellscape regardless of what happened in the past. But Silver has learned he can use the emeralds to seal Iblis inside himself, believing he can handle that burden. But the spell doesn't work on him like it does from people in the royal family. Blaze, finally contributing to the plot, believing her firepower is not make her a better candidate. And while this does give the world of Iblis, it's a tragic
It's just like the raid, though.
destroyed in the process. He saves the world, but the question central to his campaign comes up again. At what cost? While all might seem well with the universe, we then unlock the last story, the final last story segment in the series, as this was the last game to use this structure of storytelling. The first 10 minutes of the last story in this game is
Cut my
absolutely
leg.
as it seems the writers typically toss their arms in the air and says, screw it. We need to get to these character endings to the final boss in a couple of cutscenes. Doesn't matter if it makes sense, but make it happen. Shadow might have defeated Nephilis, but remember, there are two Nephilises in this plot. The other one decides that picking goobers like Silver and killing Sonic was a fool's errand. He can just do it himself. He finds Sonic and Elise, blinds them with a Chaos Emerald, and then shoots a laser through Sonic's chest that genuinely kills him. Sonic the Hedgehog gets murdered on screen again. With it being that easy, you really gotta wonder why Nephilis didn't just do it himself. Perhaps Elise and Sonic didn't have the proper bond earlier, and he just wanted Silver to ramp up the stakes for him. I have no idea. The story never says. But regardless, Elise cries over Sonic's death and Iblis is released. But things really go off the rails as Nephilis then just warps all 7 emeralds to his location where you spend all of Shadow's story looking for emeralds. But what was he waiting for? Nephilis uses the emeralds to fuse with Iblis and becomes Solaris again, destroying all of time and space in the process. As each of the surviving characters are gathered in this time-space rift as they react to the news of Sonic's death. Everyone, including Shadow, just thinks, yeah, we're kind of screwed, until Silver declares they've got to try something. They've got to travel into what's left of the world and being torn apart by Solaris to gather the emeralds and bring Sonic back to life. Beginning the final stage, end of the world, where you play bits of the earlier levels, and now into the total time-space collapse. After that, we get the most infamous moment in Sonic history where they resolve the plotline where Elise is in love with Sonic, I guess, by kissing him back to life with the power of the emeralds. Shame, too, because besides that entire angle of the story, this is a pretty cool cutscene. Sonic is revived as Super Sonic, and without words, he gives that power to Shadow, who becomes Super Shadow once more, and also Silver, the first and only appearance of Super Silver as the Super Trio battles Solaris at the end of the time-space continuum. I think this final boss wins the award for my favorite in the entire series. There's never been this ludicrous finale in the Sonic series, and they use every tool at their disposal to make this a cool moment. Like how the first phase of the fight has this more quiet, haunting music in the background, but then in phase 2, when the heroes get the upper hand, they don't just play a vocal theme like they did in the previous games. You get a full instrumental arrangement of Sonic theme, his world in the background. It's absolutely one of the best tracks in the series.
I heard that song before.
My hero can make that song.
Once Solaris is destroyed, Sonic and Elise are taken back in time once more, back to when Solaris was merely
Dada,
a
I'm
queen.
Super
One of the
Shadow.
Duke planned to use to alter
Super
time I
Shadow.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The world is irrevocably messed up after Solaris is
Not
destroyed time
Super
and
Shadow.
space.
Ah,
So their only recourse is to blow out the flames Solaris before the experiment ever took place.
my hand.
Elise doesn't want to because throughout this whole adventure she's learned what it's like to have fun and enjoy things. But Sonic,
I grabbed this
the
knife.
philosophy of the game, encourages her to do it because it's the right thing. Sad that history will be changed forever if she's glad the time that was spent nothing at all. After she blows out the flames, history is changed forever. The ending begins with the festival of the sun that Sonic's campaign
Navi,
celebrates.
where you going, girl?
And the
You
Dr.
go over there.
Eggman doesn't arrive to wreak havoc because the Solaris project never happened. Sonic is here just seeing the sight.
That's
The
a
entire
baby.
adventure he's
Poopy.
never happened. Although Elise gives a sense of familiarity as Sonic blasts by. Ending the game on a positive but sad note, and all major characters went through a really major arc, but it has been undone to stop Solaris from destroying the world, or being misused in the first place. Now, with that long-winded explanation wrapped up, you might wonder, what does that mean for Sonic 06's spot in Sonic timeline? I mean, the part of the game never happened, the game is not canon, right? Well, no. Sonic Generations, a later game, confirmed it exists in the multiverse, if that's what you want to call it. But even looking at the logic of the 6, the story of the game is not completely erased. What happened is that they created these alternate timelines. Timeline A, as we'll call it, goes from Sonic Advance 3 until Sonic 06, because the Solaris project happened and failed. But the events of the game caused this timeline to become defunct. In Timeline B, the flame of Solaris was out before then, so the experiment could never happen. This completely alters everything going forward. 06 is canon, just the timeline splits as a result of it, and from there, I can now explain the fallout Sonic 06's story caused the series. Starting
Now
with
we
Sonic
found the
Rush in
rope of
Nintendo
power.
DS. This game was released in 2005, and I've been wondering why I haven't over it before, and that's because I'm marking it as the first game of Timeline B, following the diversion of 06. This game was actually the debut of Blaze the Cat.
The rope of
In
power
this
is
game,
even
the
more
first section
powerful.
of the dimension called the Soul Dimension.
She's
a place where the
trying to
soul
take
elements
over.
reside. Blaze regularly battles against
She's trying to
Dr.
take
Eggman
over,
Nega,
son.
who has traveled to Sonic's dimension to team up with the regular Eggman and Blaze to recover the Soul Emerald, and has this whole arc about learning to trust friends through meeting and befriending Cream and the whole Sonic crew. Sonic and Blaze team up to become Super Sonic and Blaze to Dr. Eggman and stop the dimension from colliding with one another by returning the Soul Dimension with the Soul Emerald. Simple story, multi-page dump of text that was had to write regarding the six. But yeah, this is Blaze's true backstory. She comes from a different dimension and learns from Sonic and friends what it's like to trust others. Her being from the future and friends with Silver is clearly a timeline A thing. Although we'll see later in the series that, like Blaze in 06's ending, Silver and Blaze have a sense of familiarity with one another despite not knowing why. Blaze's story continues in the sequel, Sonic Rush Adventure, released in 2007. In this one, Sonic and Tails are the ones accidentally sent to the Soul Dimension when getting swept up in a thunderstorm. Although they don't know they're in another dimension for a while, as they spend the first act traveling on an island
rules of the game
in the
have
raccoon. The situation is not clear until running into Blaze while fighting with the local robot pirates over something called the Dual Scepter. As is revealed at the end, Eggman has teamed up with his alternate dimension counterpart once more, only in his dimension this time, as Sonic and Blaze use their respective emeralds once more to become Super Sonic and Burning Blaze to defeat them, as Sonic and Tails finally find a way home. Not much really goes on in this one, so I'm just going to safely place it after the first game. Now that we're almost finished with part 2 of the video, I realize we still have a lot of time travel and dimension hopping to talk about. So before we get into that, I figured I'd discuss Sonic and the Secret Ring, the game that was released on the Nintendo Wii in 2007. This one was developed by Sonic Team and released close to the launch of the console, as porting Sonic 06 would take more effort than putting minimal resources into making a new game. So that's how this game was born, and another factor in why 06 turned out the way it did. Secret Rings was an entirely self-contained adventure, although it was confirmed canon in Sonic Generations, but that's neither here nor there. The plot of Secret Rings is that, apparently, Sonic owns books at his house. The biggest plot twist in the game, if you ask me. The Book of the Arabian Nights, based on the real book 1001 Nights, containing famous folklore like Aladdin, is more than mere fiction in the Sonic universe. As the book is a world in and of itself, Sonic is visited by a genie of the ring from inside the book called Shara, who claims that the genie of the lamp called Eraser Jin, who is later going to be the genie of Aladdin, got so tired of granting wishes and now wiping out the story from within. So she enlists the help of Sonic to save the story. But things get tricky as the Eraser Jin seeks the 7 world rings and blasts Sonic with a flame that will kill him if he doesn't gather the 7 rings in time. Sonic and Shara become good friends throughout the plot, running into characters such as Alibaba and Sinbad, who all can sound like familiar Sonic characters despite them not actually being Tails or Knuckles. The game's story is pretty out there, but it serves as a good launching pad for designers to make more creative levels than we tend to see in Sonic games, like Dinosaur Jungle or Legend of Ruins, a series of flying animals that jump between the house guard worlds and chase after. As I said, its story is
Any other lightning weapons.
Sonic does save the Arabian Nights in
Can
the
take
end,
it on.
having his own journey as to the fate of the Arabian Nights, Sonic, and the Secret
I
Ring.
want to keep
A self-contained story isn't a problem by any
But
means.
have the
I
other
think this
end of
game
the
has
weapon.
some really cool moments. How Eraser Jin and Sonic bounce off each other in entertaining fashion, building up the boss fights well. The Eraser Jin being a really hammy villain that keeps calling Sonic a rat throughout the story, to the Hedgehog's adamant protest. The final moment between the two being one of my favorite moments for Sonic's character as he gets control of the lamp that can steal Eraser for good.
No. Yeah, he's not a rat. Whoa.
Pretty cool, not gonna lie. I'm sliding this one after the Rush games because I figured a journey like this game that really could go almost anywhere before Generations would serve as a nice relief from all the time travel and dimension hopping I was doing.
So weirdly, he's
What?
Which,
And then the guy
Sonic
was
Rivals
like,
released in the PlayStation
and then
Portable
Sonic
in 2006
was like,
and is home to one of the dumbest
I
plots
told
in Sonic
you,
history.
I'm not
And I
a
was
rat.
I'm the one spending almost
He
3 hours.
isn't a rat.
This game revolves around Dr. Eggman Nega arriving with his latest brilliant scheme.
I
He's got a
couldn't
camera
see
that
anyone.
turns whatever it focuses on into a car.
They can't destroy the other lightning
Sonic
weapons.
to rescue, and the Master Emerald is one bringing Knuckles into the plot. His ultimate plan is turning the entire world into
It
a
doesn't
car.
affect me, but only
That's
because I'm
the
holding the
silliest
other half
part.
of the lightning weapon.
Topia has a viable plan to establish an off-world base and the ability to sustain the lifestyle. This version of the inverse Doctor does not come from the Soul Dimension, though. One of the most confusing interesting developments in the history of the Sonic IP was what happened to Silver, Blaze, and Eggman Mega following Sonic 06. As established, Blaze and this version of the Doctor came from the Soul Dimension. Then Sonic 06 came out with Silver and Blaze both came from the future. Originally, 06 was meant to tie into Rush, but that was abandoned in development. We spirited away in this video with the timeline split. However, Sonic Riders started as Silver's introduction to Timeline B, which will also come from a future like 06. However, it is the same future as 06 because there is no Iblis. Rivals also tried following suit with 06 and Eggman Mega reveal he's Eggman's descendant, so tainted by the legacy of the original Eggman that he's come back to take his place with his card camera scheme. I don't know how any of that works. The official statement on this character is that he does in fact come from the future like Rivals claims. Silver
He has
was a
both
regular
legendary
nemesis of
weapons.
him,
No one's
but
ever
the
been able
Doctor
to
traveled
control
from
that.
Soul Dimension and then became a rival to Blaze. Silver traveling back in time to stop negative Eggman's plan. I'm guessing a lot of miscommunication created this mess, but technically it does make some sense. If his work in the future was financed by the robotic lineage, it would make sense to travel to a different dimension to avoid that. The only difficult thing to deal with is how the Doctors were allies in Rush and enemies in the Rivals game. It would be easy to just
We'll
toss
never
the
be able
Rivals
to
games
stop
out of
this.
canon. However, these games, as I said, debuted Silver to Timeline B, reintroducing him to the entire cast. The game has to be canon, so we just have to deal with the Eggman Mega debacle. I don't know, maybe he thought teaming up with his great-great-great-granddad would be effective, but when that failed, he just decided to burn everything to the ground. I can't devote more energy to this project. This is complete rubbish. These games being the guiltiest of that, every character must fight each other for no reason, both in this series. But it's relevant to the Silvers meeting Sonic and Friends again. So we're slapping this one after Secret Rings. And then you get Rivals 2, which is also a big adventure of Eggman Mega being up to no good, trying to awaken the Ifrit monster in the future by collecting Chow in the present day, as Silver has returned once more to save them, teaming up with Ezio from the Chaotix to achieve that goal. Shadow is informed of this by the real Eggman who uses Metal Sonic as his vessel to deliver messages to Shadow. Sonic and Tails try to stop Eggman, having no idea that it's actually Eggman Mega in disguise. Knuckles and Rouge team up to track down Emeralds, also not knowing the Eggman ruse. That's a thing in both games. Shadow and Silver know what's actually going on, while Sonic and Knuckles don't. Rivals 2 isn't anywhere near as nonsensical as the first game, even though the writing is still pretty poor, since the game has to contrive reasons for characters to race each other in almost every stage. The funny
It's
thing is
broken.
the entire game is
No, I couldn't put it back
have
together. It's
a
not
short,
broken.
level-headed conversation, unlike the immediate jump to fighting and all the rest of the cutscenes.
Silver, what are you doing here? Hey, what's with getting in my face? I need those Chow. It's important that I have them. Now move aside. Help yourself. I need to collect some rings to fuel this emerald detector. Okay. Thanks.
I also unironically like the scene in Shadow's story where Metal Sonic almost destroys himself to reveal he has a Chaos Emerald inside him that Shadow can use to return to the present day. I like it because it does show that Metal Sonic does still have some free will left. When Rivals 1 and 2 both go to show that Metal Sonic, after his rebellion in Sonic Heroes, became more lifeless than ever. Just a robot that the Doctor tosses at Sonic as cannon fodder, or to be his eyes and ears like in this game. But in all campaigns, the day is saved and all is right in the universe, placing this game after Sonic Rivals 1 in the timeline, as things become much different for the series starting with the next game. With that said, part 2 of the video is now ready. I was expecting this to go well over the hour mark, but here we are. I like the credit though, as I'm still having fun working on this, although I keep saying that in the writing phase, I started to edit this mega video that I thought was going to be a quick, easy 30 minutes, 40 minutes tops. We still kind of ended on a bit of a lymph note for part 2, like part 1, but rest assured, part 3 is coming next week, where we shall discuss all the remaining games from Sonic Unleashed all the way to Sonic Frontiers. So I hope everyone looks forward to that. In the meantime, I'll say what I always do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Both of them.
He has the weapons of legend.
Electric! Electric! Electric!
Before we get into the actual story arc, there are a couple of things we need to discuss that I have failed to mention previously. That begins with these two, Rough and Tumble. They are your classic two-man tag team of bully bad boys. A proud tradition made famous by Bebop and Rocksteady of TMNT fame, and then clammed up by Jesse and James of Pokemon fame. And this pairing's even been used a couple times in extended Sonic media. But unlike a lot of those other pairings, these guys actually look like Sonic characters. Certainly more than the first time we used a skunk in a Sonic comic. I don't really plan on doing a full episode on these two characters, because you've probably seen this set up plenty of times before. A couple of brutes who can give the heroes the business, but never actually win. The They're just here to carry out orders and fill time with fights that usually end in a comedic defeat. And they have a really hard time differentiating their personalities. You know, the big one has a missing tail and he's real sensitive about it, but they're basically the same person between two different bodies. Not much below the surface, but they're still fun every time they show up. Considering how new the IDW universe is, we haven't had a chance to have too many encounters with them, but we already know the deal. They're jerks, and they love weapons. First time they used whip spins, and then they got their tails stuck as foot by Sonic and Knuckles, and they showed back up with some new weapons. And again, they got defeated. They are a threat to normal civilians, but obviously don't stand much of a chance against Sonic and his crew. And they wouldn't even have had a second chance to tackle Sonic and his friends had they not been busted out of jail first. And that's thanks to the third new villain we're going to be discussing, Dr. Starlight, a brilliant yet self-absorbed scientist and a die-hard Eggman fanboy. Think of Snivelly just, not sniveling, and with actual smarts to back up all that ambition. Now, I know this dude looks like he should be greeting Scrooge McDuck and his nephews, but, this is a Sonic character. And he's not a duck. He's a dastardly, duck-billed, pretentious platypus. And what a fantastic fit for this franchise. I hope they've not used one of these before. They have hedgehogs and echidnas. Oh, and speaking of, did you know that these things are the only other mammal, besides echidnas, that lay eggs in their poisonous? I completely forgot about that before Gilly the Kid randomly reminded me while we were talking about these odd little animals. So shout out to Gilly, of course. If you not check out his channel, go do that. You big dum-dum. Don't you like good things? Look at his neck. Look how beautiful that neck is. Go watch his stuff. They lay eggs, they got a duck bill, a beaver tail, spurred feet, and they're poisonous. How are jackalopes not a real thing, but this is? How is a Psyduck the closest Pokemon comparison I can make less weird than the actual animal? Also, how do Sonic and Pokemon not have jackalope characters yet? Come on, guys. Well, Starline doesn't have a beaver tail, but he does have webbed gloves and spurs on his heeled boots. I love those little details. Oh, and he also has a warped topaz. That's right, kids. We have yet another magical MacGuffin made from precious stone in the Sonic universe. And it does what the name implies. Warps you from one place to the other. It's basically a portal gun, which, yes, is basically chaos control. Essentially making this like another stupid gem. Somewhat redundant. I'll share more of my general opinion on the reliance of Pretty Rocks at the end of this arc's coverage, but for now, pay attention because this gem is important. And thankfully, unlike the Phantom Ruby, the capabilities of the Warped Topaz are clearly laid out. Starline has spent his life studying this specific gem, so he has a really good handle on how to use it. And use it he does. He can hop from one place to another in an instant or open a portal to use as a window to peer into other parts of the world. If he were, say, in search of something or someone and needed to scour a large amount of land in a short amount of time. And he can use this as a means to transport equipment or allies with ease, or leave items in specific places without ever being detected. All of that without having to hold it above his head and yell chaos control. So yes, it is a very useful gem, but unlike the emeralds, it is not a source of its own energy. It needs outside assistance to make any of this possible. Thankfully for Starline, as he discovered, it really doesn't take much to get this thing going. As he puts it, even the most passive of energy waves will get it to do all of those wonderful things I just listed. I think that would make this the most battery-efficient thing ever created by Sega. Too bad it's fictional, because seriously, Sega, how do you have a device made in 2020 that runs on 2 AA batteries and still only lasts for a couple of hours? I know the Game Gear Micro is a throwback, but you do understand, this was the one thing nobody wanted to come back, right? How is this thing $50? Hurrah! Why do I still want it? What's wrong with me? Anyway, while the Warp Topaz is energy efficient, that energy needs to remain on the low side, and it needs to remain controlled. With years of research and practice, as well as a custom-made glove, the platypus is now the only person on the planet who can confidently use the topaz in an efficient and masterful way. He even gives Sonic and Silver a hard time when he faces off against them in a later issue. These 3 new villains were created to fill a specific role that had not yet been filled in this new canon. And honestly, I think they fit quite well. They're more simple, like the skunks, or more complex, like the platypus. I personally like all of these characters. They fit in well with Sonic's world, and even better with his nemesis, Eggman. Or as we last knew him when these last were with him, Mr. Tinker. As I pointed out in the video covering the battle for Angel Island, he had actually been kidnapped in a quick change between all the action with Neo Metal Sonic. Oh, that's all thanks to Starline and his pretty swirling marble. The Knot Duck used his topaz to open windows all across the world to track down Eggman after he was defeated in the war. He managed to do what Eggman's warning Badnik had failed to do for months. He found Eggman and then portaled out Rough and Tumble from jail in exchange for capturing Tinker to bring him to Starline, where he would begin the process of returning Eggman to his old self. But despite his best efforts, he doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. I mean, it does look like Tinker is taking more of an interest to Eggman's old badness, but considering that he coddles them, this is clearly still Tinker through and through. Also, I just wanted to quickly point out how much I love the quick interaction between Tinker and Warbot and Cubot. They just don't know how to handle a kind robot. He even asked if it would feel better if he yelled at them, or maybe gave him a list of eldritch monsters that he can resurrect and lose control over. It's stuff like this that makes me stress that you really need to read the comics. It's full of great little moments like this that a summary can't properly cover. I also love the layout of the lab. Weirdly reminiscent of the interior of Sonic Adventure's egg carrier. Also, that reminds me, later on in the issue, we see Rouge chilling on a sunbathing chair and comments on Eggman's surprising workout routine. Like, that has to be a nod to those goofy pool chairs in the egg carrier, right? I know it's not the exact same design, but I remember thinking it was hilarious that Robotnik had an indoor pool and a ton of sunbathing chairs surrounding it in the game. Ah, man, whatever, that's great. But back to the lab. The reason why we had to focus on the door in the first place is because somebody was coming through it. That somebody, or something, was Metal Sonic. But now that we're all caught up with Starline and Tinker, we need to rewind a little bit. As you might recall, Metal Sonic had returned to normal after his defeat on Angel Island. But Sonic wasn't just going to let that robot run free. No, first he was going to have Tails reactivate him, make him functional again, but of course make his weapons useless, and then set him free. I had a couple of problems with this after I read this scene. I mean, it just seemed like the stupidest move to make. But it is consistent with Sonic's characterization in this comic, and it will be addressed somewhat. We'll get to that in due time. And this series itself has set the precedence of some sort of robotic sentience in Eggman's machines. Both Warbot and Cubot in this very issue are mentioned to have emotions programmed into them. General and Omega are both their own beings. And when Metal had a voice, he too seemed to be his own person. So I understand why Sonic would treat him as a person and have the compassion to offer him another path outside of Eggman's service. Since to him, that's no longer an option. But Metal, unsurprisingly, tells Sonic where he can stick his friendship in the silent, mining way he knows how to do, and then jets off. Tails, who has rightfully been questioning Sonic's choices, yet been going along with them just fine, asks Sonic if it was a good idea to let this consistently dangerous robot off on his own. Sonic's like, yeah, no, it's fun. And then 2 pages later, Metal shows up at the hidden lab where Tinker is being held. Alright, another thing before I go forward, this was another glaring issue I had. So Neo Metal's whole deal was taking Eggman's place while he was simultaneously searching for the real deal once he went missing after the war. He had Badniks and the Egg Fleet at his disposal, but couldn't find him all this time. But now that he's a neutered robot with no resources, he finds the guy in seemingly seconds. Is it because the base is letting off some sort of signal? Is it because Sonic also clued Metal into the fact that Eggman was alive and well? Am I just missing a throwaway line here? I mean, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but come on. Whatever the case is, Metal's appearance is the final push needed to bring back Dr. Ivo Eggman Robot. And we can argue over what we call this guy all we want, but one name that absolutely no longer fits is Mr. Tinker. I was genuinely surprised how much I enjoyed the Tinker persona, and how bummed I was to see it leave, as inevitable as it was. I had a good time with his scenes, and ironically, Sonic seemed to get along best with Eggman when he was dressed like a long-lost Mario brother. No, it was fun while it lasted. Toot toot, Tinker.
Shop Kohl's limited time flash deals before they're gone. Earn major Kohl's cash with $50 for every $50 you spend. Save more at home. Plus, take an extra 15% off already great deals. Like cozy boots for just $12.74. Get 30% off Nike and Adidas. 50% off toys. Next shop in-store Fridays for even more deals. Like a 50-inch video TV. Plus, a chance to win big during the TGIPF sleep.
No, I just shoved you into my cup. I just shoved you right inside. You can't escape, you're inside.
Take this!
Yes, please.
Thanks, been renting 5 years.
You're inside my
As
body.
sad as it was to say goodbye to the sunnier side of Eggman, the
Well,
comic
guess
wastes no
what?
time in
Like that
researching
episode of
how
Dragon
great
Ball
of a
Z where
character
Goku
the
had
real
sword
deal
with the
actually
Goku.
is. I can just hear my pull up in his lines. It's fantastic. Eggman wastes no time assessing the scene before him and letting everybody in the room
No,
know that
identify. Identify names for
Also, I love the relationship between these two in the comic. It's the best it's ever been. And I also love how quickly he becomes the Shredder to Rough and Tumble's Bebop and Rocksteady. And Starline, despite having gone through all of this trouble just to bring back the good doctor, doesn't get so much as a thank you. But Starline's not done proving his worth. He not only tracked down and brought back Eggman and his own assistants, both with his intelligence and Warp Topaz, and two lumbering Nikes who already hate Sonic, he also brought along all 7 Chaos Templates. Oh boy. A short while after Eggman gets himself caught up on all of Metal Sonic's data he had collected as Neo, Starline points out how close Metal got to winning. And with a few tweaks, it could potentially take out Sonic once and for all. But Eggy dismisses this. Plans over and done with. It's time to move on to something else. Starline is excited at the prospect and amazed how quickly Eggman has a new scheme ready to go, but also keep the scene in mind going forward. The choices made by both Sonic and Eggman are going to be further explored as the story carries on. Now that he has his blackies, it's time to put them to work. Eggman sends them off on their missions while bringing out the plans for his big comeback. Declaring the world had made him suffer a major defeat, and in turn, he would make the world suffer. And little did Sonic, the reader, or even Eggman himself know just how bad things were going to get. Sonic is just chilling on the beach, recapping to a flicky what had been happening in the series up to this point. And since we have already done that in this show, we're not going to bother doing that. But like most times Sonic is chilling on the beach, he's rudely interrupted by a new adventure. This time being in the form of a panicked Tails, who lets Sonic know that an invitation just randomly appeared in his workshop. An invitation to celebrate the return of the world's most brilliant doctor. And it seems pretty obvious that Tinker has been returned to his Eggman persona. Sonic does get that that's not as simple as it seems, but they won't really know for sure until they go to Windmill Village to check it out. So, the duo head on. Meanwhile, Eggman's chilling in his secret base while the platypus Starline enters the room. Turns out he's the one who uses Warp Topaz to drop off the note in Bill's workshop. He then asks Eggman, why? Why even do this? Sonic doesn't know that Eggman's back. He doesn't need to know that Eggman's back. They can sneakily get away with whatever plan they're up to without his knowledge. Eggman replies that just kind of the way he does things. He wants to mess with Sonic's head. He wants to know that Eggman is back and working on something, but he doesn't want Sonic to know exactly what he's working on. Starline goes along with it. He is an Eggman fanboy after all, but this won't be the last time he questions the way the Doctor runs things. But what is the great Doctor up to anyway? Well, let's find out as he pours a metallic ooze over a flower, instantly transforming it into metal. This is the first of the few experiments we're going to be seeing for the metal virus. We jump back to Sonic, who has arrived at Windmill Village and finds the Elder, Scruffy, that's his name, he tied up to a tree branch and just put a pinata sign on him. My God, so brutal. Scruffy informs Sonic that Tinker had been kidnapped about a week ago and nobody could find Sonic to inform him. But before they can deal with that, they have to deal with Rough and Tumble. They're the ones that have assaulted the Elder and Windmill Village as a whole. And it looks like they have brand new toys they didn't have before. Sonic takes note of this, saying that they're not smart enough to come up with this tech on their own. So they obviously know where Eggman currently is. We're not going to spend too much time on the fight, so if you want to see how that plays out, I recommend checking it out because the art is quite fantastic and frenetic. We're instead going to go back to focus on Eggman and his experiments.
Penny, doesn't
He's
that
moved
make
on
you
from
feel?
vegetation to fun, pouring the virus over a little rat, or a poppy, I guess, in this world. I keep forgetting all these little guys have stupid names. These experiments are letting the reader know how the metal virus is going to work. If you're dumped in the stuff, you instantly transform into a zombie robot. But if you're just touched by a zombie robot, it will spread the infection, but not instantaneously. This page lets us know that these robots do obey the word of Eggman. But he also notes that the subject shows aggressive tendencies without direction. He just sees this as a bonus, but again, this is foreshadowing of things to come. The experiments continue with our little squirrel friend now taking up the metal flower and touching it to different objects to see if the virus will spread to anything else. As it turns out, it only works on organics, but things that are processed or inorganic material remain unaffected. Meanwhile, Sonic and Tails wrap things up with the two skunks, and I gotta say, I do love how these look like fun boss battles. Like, I would love to take these guys on in the video game. Showing up Tails' calculations by ricocheting a tub of what I guess is skunk smell. Also, I don't know how I've never realized that through all these years of Sonic comics, I've never once expected any of the skunks to actually stink up the place. Like, this is the very first time I've even thought about it, and it's kind of genius it's used in this way. Anyway, yeah, they stink up one of the skunks, and then they chop off the robotic tail of the other, which just sends him into a deep depression. He's just done. He doesn't even feel like fighting anymore. Poor guy. But before they can round these guys up and send them back to jail, a portal just opens up under them and freaks out Sonic and Tails. The skunks are gone. And while Sonic can confirm that Tinker is no longer in Windmill Village, and Eggman is probably fact, he really hasn't gotten much further in uncovering this mystery. That's fine because he's going to now turn to Silver to see if he's made any headway in whatever he's doing. Apparently some random dude just told Silver where an Eggman base was, so the two hogs are going to go follow up on it. And sure enough, they discover warp portals and some classic Eggman baddies moving tech into it. But before they can strike, Metal Sonic appears and sends Silver flying. As you might recall, just a couple of issues ago, Sonic decided to set this guy free, but looks like he's back at full power, so good job there, Sonic. Anyway, a fight ensues and Silver manages to get the drop on Metal, holding him in place with his telekinesis. But just like the skunks, Metal is teleported out to
myself or
reappearing next with Dr. Starlight, this being Sonic's first encounter with the Platypus, and this grand show of it. Excited to finally take on the Hedgehog, who has briefed the great Doctor all these years, the one being who can truly match his mentor. He's excited to see how he fares against him. All the while, Eggman is continuing his experiments with the metal virus, this time showing that repeat exposure to the virus from an infected will speed up the process. That's all the info he needs, and he's ready to step into phase 2, but before he does, Rough and Tumble pop back into the base. Little ticked off that their new weaponry didn't work in taking down Sonic and Tails, and they demand more weapons. Eggman knows just what to give them. While all this is happening, Silver and Sonic continue to take on Starline and Metal, and those warp portals are giving them a lot of trouble. But no matter how far away Starline throws Sonic, eventually he makes his way back, pinning the platypus down and demanding some details on Eggman. Starline tells him that everything's been secured in the vault and gives Silver the access code. And Silver goes to check it out while Sonic has the platypus in his grasp. But the only thing Starline will give up is that Eggman is planning something breathtaking. And that he also planted explosives inside the vault and he just gave his friend the detonation code. Sonic goes chasing in after Silver as the base explodes. Starline looks on, proud of what he's managed to accomplish, and sure, the Doctor will appreciate the defeat of his greatest foe. But as he opens a portal back to the base, Eggman grabs Starline by the throat and throws him against the glass that is containing his metal virus experiments. Furious that Starline would attempt to take down Sonic on his own. Starline doesn't understand, though. Why wouldn't he want Sonic out of the way? He would just mess with his plans. Eggman retorts that the Hedgehog is his to destroy. He could carpet bomb him whenever he felt like, but that's not the point. Actually, he did try that in Sonic 3, and that didn't work out too well. Anyway, the point is, Eggman wants to take him down with his brilliance. There's a certain way to vanquish a lifelong nemesis, as he puts it. Starline apologizes, and Eggman tells him, don't let it happen again. Starline's sort of confused. I don't think it can happen again. Like, what are you talking about, man? But Eggman knows how the Hedgehog works, and shows a live feed of the destroyed base. Sonic is alive and well. Eggman then follows up by asking why he wanted to jump out of that base anyway. They haven't used it in years. All that stuff's obsolete. But to Starline, they're treasured collectibles of Eggman's legacy, which I'm sure will be coming into play down the road for Starline. Eggman waves it off and just asks him how his first encounter with the rodent felt. Starline tells him that the experience had put a lot of things into perspective for him, and they certainly will as the story continues on. Back at Restoration HQ, Silver gets put to bed so he can recover from saving Sonic from the blast, and him and Amy decide it might be best to go check out another Eggman base, one he's no longer using, and attempt to tap into his network to see what he's up to. So the two speed off onto their next adventure.
Kohl's limited time flash deals before they're gone. Earn a major Kohl's cash with $15 for every
Navi, stop eating my cell phone. That's trying to kill me now.
Now, keep in mind, this is 14 issues in at this point, and we have a pretty good flow of things. Sonic even teams up with one of his friends, they stop some small skirmish while going up to the bigger bad. Last year, it was Neo Metal Sonic, but it all played out like pretty standard Sonic fare. But going into issue 15, while things still seem
How
to
did I
be
get in
par
here?
for
I'm
course,
just doing
things
Kung
take
Fu.
a drastic turn at the end of this issue. Sonic and Amy end up at Echo Montell. It's an Eggman base by, well, you know, he's got a face on the side of a mountain, so it's probably his. The two chat back and forth, giving us a lot of needed exposition about the Eggman War. A lot of stuff we never really got from Sonic Forces. Sonic notes that it seems like there was a big battle here, and he implies that there was, and they lost a lot of good people in it too. They continue to talk for a bit, with Sonic reassuring her that they eventually won the war, and Amy made sure those sacrifices mattered. They meant something. Amy replies, well, you did win the war for us. And I mean, that's also true. I'm not going to get into my problems with that particular story again right now. They continue to chat for a bit, discussing what they plan on doing and what they're looking for in this base, and they come across a set of computers, and it looks like they're in business. Meanwhile, back at Eggman's secret lab, he begins to pour out some containers of a very specific silver liquid, making them into what looks like backpack super soakers to hand off to Ruff and Tumble. Tells them that these are the backups. We'll use them as a last resort. Also showing them a brand new machine he wants them to take into the tunnels after Sonic. And back in those tunnels, we see that Amy has logged into the EggNet, showing the files for a new ship. One that looks a lot like the Space Colony Arch, but it's actually a lot smaller, with a lot of talk about Halo distribution. But before they can figure out what it's distributing, the walls begin to shake, and Ruff and Tumble come bursting through in a giant drill. More playful banter is thrown back and forth between heroes and villains, and another fun fight plays out as it has plenty of times before in the series. Sonic and Amy team up, get past the defenses of the drill, and take it out of commission. This is our third encounter with the two skunks, and it's playing out exactly as you'd expect at this point. That is until they reveal that they have a secret weapon on their backs, and they've been saving the best for last. Activate them with a button on their chest. But to their horror, backpacks unleash the metal goo onto the skunks themselves. Sonic and Amy, Ruff and Tumble, nobody has any idea what is happening. Ruff and Tumble are quickly transformed into zombots. There's no more banter. There's no more tomfoolery. And no matter how much Sonic quips, they don't respond. Our two heroes are kind of at a loss for what to do, so they just keep dodging them. Until Amy lands a massive blow of her hammer onto one of the skunks. Oh my god. Giving us some body horror action here as the skunk is mutilated. His hand is sitting on the ground. I think it's here to imply that these characters have been completely transformed on a cellular level here, as he quickly reforms as if nothing had happened. Sonic in turn goes on the offensive, spin dashing hard into the bigger skunk, leaving him another gory, gooey mess. But he, as well, reforms with zero issue. And Sonic realizes that strange metal goo is now latched onto him. He warns Amy not to touch the skunks. But now that he's already infected anyway, he launches both of them into the ravine below. Sonic is out of quips, and that cocky attitude seems to have faded as he quickly realizes he is in a lot of trouble. Whatever hit the two skunks is infectious, and it's spreading on Sonic.
You know how it looks like?
When we last left Sonic, he was attacked by the newly infected Ruff and Tumble. While they were defeated, Sonic was in turn infected himself. Would our beloved hero be turned into a mindless zombie? Would he be taken out of the picture right at the start of this story, leaving our supporting cast to save the world without his help? While that would be a very interesting premise, no, he's just fine. Tabletop Spy Tales Workshop and sees the Hedgehog on a hamster wheel. Now, I just need to say that I absolutely love when they write Sonic doing actual hedgehog things. He is so removed from actual hedgehogs, as he should be. So it's just adorable when they throw in jokes like this. I also love how embarrassed Tails looks. The Sonic's like, you know, whatever. And Tails like, so, is this, what you boys get up to? And we find out, Sonic isn't showing signs of the metal infection because his speed has seemingly burned it out of his system. Yeah, he changes into the issue, and we already have the solution. What what a shocker. Sonic speed can fix time, so no reason it can't run off a little shiny goo. And the next couple pages are basically recap. The back and forth between these characters is light and casual and still fun to read through, but it doesn't really further the plot. It's just here to remind you of everything that's been happening so far. So let's not get that any more focus. Because as the animal people are chatting away, we turn our attention
tired or
to
thirsty
Eggman
yet?
and Starlight. And this is yet another page of setup, but it's at least advancing the plot a bit, and I do enjoy the little hints of world building that this page does. Being as ancient of a Sonic boomer as I am, it's nice to see some casual explanation as to how Iggy can build a giant fortress as quickly as he does, and that's because of his badness. Starline comments that he didn't think they were capable of such versatility, and Egg McMuffin simply states that some are built for war and some are built for construction. That's a fairly obvious explanation, but I do appreciate an explanation at all. However, Eggman also states that rounding up animals to power his badniks can be a bit tedious, but that problem will soon be solved with the metal virus. And from here, he launches his face ship, not the Ark, not the Death Egg, the face ship. And I also love that it's just blowing its nose out of the mountain. And I also dig that Thanos-style throne for AZ, with the little Chaos Emeralds bedazzling the wall above it. The next couple pages basically explain how the ship works, so read the issue itself if you want the finer details, but basically, this ship both creates the viral goo and acts as a distributor. And just to show how much of a jerk Eggman is, his first target for the metal virus payload is Windmill Village, the same community that took him in as Mr. Tinker. This is the first of many, many dark moments that are to come. But can we just take a moment to appreciate how hilarious it looks when a giant face just vomits all over a town? Look how the virus trots out. Wah! He sees Scruffy, the kindly village elder, do his best to shield the child from the metallic wave, but to no avail, as they quickly turn into zombies. We see other civilians attempt to take refuge on a roof and try to help someone out of the liquid, not realizing that they are sealing their own fates. And I also need to point out here that this guy's already turning, even though he's not completely covered. This is a slight visual and continuity error I will point out later on in a different video. Next, we see some actual destruction from the Zombots themselves, who tear through doors so they can touch people on the arm. Look, I know it's a kid's comic, but they do deflate the terror of a zombie horde when all they're really doing is using people as hand towels. I recommend not thinking about it too deeply, though, because it will take the wind out of sails of later scenarios. So let's keep going. It really took no time at all to completely take over this little village. Eggman asks Starline how he liked the show, and just in case you thought there might be any redeeming quality to this platypus, Starline calls it a transcendent experience. He is in awe of Eggman. He loved every second of this. Man, what a duckhead. With his Insta army now ready, Eggman commands them to spread the virus far and wide, and they proceed to do just that, with a little handprint on the tree reminding the reader just how serious this virus really is. And after the year that was 2020, I don't think I need to remind anybody how serious a virus can be. But when this book came out, we certainly were not ready for how horrible things would become. And the same can be said for Sonic and Friends, because the bad news isn't done rolling in. We return to Sonic as he's finalizing the next course of action with Tails and Tangle. He puts his hand up to high-five Tangle, only to see a sparkling glint just below his glove. He avoids making contact with Tangle at just the last moment. And thank goodness, because as it turns out, Sonic is still infected with the virus. His speed has only pushed it back. It has not yet been cured. So with that, Sonic rushes off, with a worried look on his face, that incessant confidence wavering. And while he's on the move, he thinks to himself that he has been in somewhat similar circumstances before, making references to Unleashed and Secret Rings, but he does note that this feels different. And buddy, you have no idea. The issue ends with the virus slowly creeping up the side of a tree, making contact with the sleeping Flicky. It awakens as a zombie and takes flight. And the last page shows us that even the smallest infected can potentially cause massive damage, as we see the little bird making its way towards a bustling city.
Shop Kohl's limited time flash deals before they're gone. Earn major Kohl's
Can
cash
you
for
just
$50
pull out
for
a
every
pistol
$50
and
you spend.
bang bang
Save more at home. Plus, take an extra
Couldn't you
15%
just
off
pull out
already
a
great
pistol
deals.
and bang
Like
bang
cozy
gun?
boots for
No,
just
because they,
$12.74.
robots
30%
reconstruct
off Nike and
themselves and
Adidas.
break them.
50% off toys.
So if you
And
shoot
shop
them, they
in-store
just
Friday
heal.
for even more deals. Like a 50-inch Vizio TV. Plus, a chance
Yeah,
to
it's pretty-
win
pretty
big
bad.
during the
Oh,
TGIP
that's what
Suite
they
with
say.
more than 1 million in
No,
prizes.
they wouldn't die from that. Because Amy took, remember,
So that
Amy
is
hammered
issue
one
16, and I
body
noticed it
apart,
grew
and it
quite a
just
few
grew
pages
itself a
as
new
a lot
body.
of it was recap, but things really hit the fan in issue 17 going forward. And I felt it was important to take a breather here to really emphasize everything that's being set up in this one issue. Just a bit of a critique first, though. I did have issue with the exhausting amount of time recounting things that had happened up to this issue, which is normally fine here and there for a long-running comic series, but considering every issue has a recap page, this did feel excessive. Just bringing Tangle in to play audience surrogate, and then in turn advertise her own mini-story in the annual for a split second, felt like a waste of a few pages. But also,
I gotta
I
use
could
black.
remind readers that she does exist, and her cheering mood really sets the tone for the scenes featuring Sonic and Pals.
Let me
She
get
doesn't
back.
show up very much after this issue, and for good reason. Because as we will see, the book takes a decidedly darker tone
Let
going
me get back.
forward, and Tangle's endless optimism just isn't the best fit here. That's not to say she isn't in for some really amazing moments in this arc, or that her character can't work in more serious moments, as we've seen in her miniseries, but I think keeping the focus off of her was the right call, because the tone she helps set when she's talking with Sonic and Tails juxtaposes brilliantly against Eggman's assault on Windmill Village. And even though we now understand the devastation that can be caused by the spaceship and the virus and the looming threat it presents to Sonic himself, all of that is underplayed with Tangle cheering our heroes on, confident that the boys will get things sorted out. We start off positive and upbeat, sink into a cold terror with Eggman, and then come back up for air with Tangle to bookend things. Her presence here is the last glimmer of positivity these characters are going to have for a long while, with nobody, be it the cast or the reader, hell, even Eggman himself, truly understanding just how serious things are about to get. And I also want to reiterate a point I made in my Modern Sonic video, because I really like how Ian writes Eggman. And I kind of want to compare him to Robotnik from SatAM. And look, Archie fans, I know that there's a lot of history worth untangling and sorting out with that version of Robotnik / Robo-Robotnik / Eggman / Reboot Eggman, all in due time. But while IDW Eggman certainly has the history of video game Eggman, this is essentially a fresh start for the character. And even though the Metal Virus was originally intended for the Archie reboot era, this is also kind of a fresh start and reinterpretation of SatAM's roboticization. In the old SatAM universe, Robotnik had taken over the world, and a large part of that was taking over not only the Kingdom of Acorn, but the ability to roboticize Mobius. It was thanks to this and this weird giant warship of his that he was able to overthrow the king and in turn take over the world of Mobius. He was so overwhelmingly powerful that Sonic and his freedom fighter pals would spend most of their time in hiding. So you can see some parallels between that rendition of Sonic and his story as opposed to the IDW saga of the Metal Virus. We certainly have a lot of hindsight to really refine this idea and make it something new, but I still want to compare it to Eggman's Metal Virus. Because like I said before, if you take the modern team of Sonic characters and plop them into the SatAM world, World Metropolis will be gone by the end of the day. I love the Freedom Fighters. I've certainly spent a great deal of time talking about how great of a character Sally is, and I will get to the rest of them in due time. But over the years, Sonic's abilities have greatly improved. And even back then, SatAM left out a lot of abilities that Sonic was capable of doing in the video games, namely the Super and Hyper forms. And that's also not including Amy Rose and her Pico Hammer, or Modern Tails and his brilliance. Knuckles doesn't even exist in that world, or Shadow. Silver, there are a lot of super-powered buddies for Sonic to bring along to take this dictator down. So in turn, to balance out that power, you need a villain who can go as hard as Dr. Eggman. Sure, he hasn't quite taken over the world outside of that one time, but when you compare roboticization as opposed to the Metal Virus is far more efficient and much faster acting. This is just one of Eggman's many, many giant schemes. He's just throwing this crap out all the time. That's why Sonic and Eggman balance each other out. So no one side has more overwhelming power than the other. And that's how I see the Metal Virus. I see it as a very extra version of roboticization. And I don't know about you, but that is pretty cool. And you have the extra added wrinkle of Sonic having a very severe handicap that will come into play through this entire saga. While the silver lining of Sonic's silver spots is that he can keep it contained with his speed, the book only alludes to what Sonic himself is about to endure. Sure, Sonic runs fast, but have you ever asked yourself, for how long can he keep running? So we know the infection has kicked into high gear with Eggman dropping a goo load on his first town. But we don't pick up this story with him, or even with Sonic. We instead start off with a familiar setting we have not yet seen in this book, the Chaotix Detective Agency. After watching their opening cutscene in Sonic Heroes so many times during November Chaotix, I have to admit this made me smile. Going with the bird's eye view shot and everything. So yeah, we see Vector on the phone, and for what might be the very first time, we actually know who he's talking to on the other end. Tails has called him to give him the heads up about the metal virus, and he in turn passes this information on to his team, or to any reader who's randomly picking up his book. Charmy gets spooked, and who can really blame the kid? With a single touch, you can get turned into a zombie robot. It's creepy stuff. Vector reassures them that this world's a big place, probably won't even reach them. And just because this is the Chaotix, they punctuate that sentence with a Zombot crashing through the front door.
Bam! Leroy Jenkins, bitches!
Look, if you're gonna go out, at least do it on a perfectly timed comedic note, you know? Looking over this page now really hits differently after living through 2020. This virus is all the way over on the other side of the world, but then suddenly it's kicking down your front door. You got Marvel and DC desperately trying to keep up with trends, and somehow Sonic the Hedgehog is the most topical book of the modern day. What a time to be alive. Well, our boys aren't going to be taken out on an ironic punchline. They jump into action with no luck. Shurikens are no good, and that idiot Bug is just about to run into a zombie until Vector grabs him and tells him, no touchy. Who knew that Sonic Says segment would turn out so handy? Handy, hands, touching. This is a really dangerous territory to joke in, so let's keep going. They make their way outside to see their city in complete chaos, and the face ship just drooling on the skyscraper. I can't get over that stupid thing. Like, maybe it's supposed to be intimidating, but you had to go outside to see some stupid idiot face up in the sky drooling. Oh man, I love it. But yeah, this is it, guys. This is the state of things going forward. No more buildup. The metal virus is here, and it's taking no prisoners. Except for, its entire army of conscripted robot slaves who are prisoners within their own body. You know what? I just wanted to throw a cliche cool line in there, but I already ruined it, so never mind. Well, I gotta say, I really love the dynamic of the Chaotix and how it's written out here. As silly as Vector can get, it's here in a time of crisis. We see him look at a situation in front of him and immediately lay out a plan of action, showing why he's such a capable leader. And this won't be the only time in this story or this book in general. And here we have Espio calling out any potential weaknesses to help fine-tune things. And Vector, without missing a beat, responds in kind with his reasoning. Vector says they have to head to the docks. Espio says that they're going to have the siege to their backs, so they're going to be trapped. Vector responds saying, like, hey, look, there's nowhere on land that's going to be safe, and at least there we can bottleneck the situation and have a defensible location. And that's it. There's no bickering. There's no arguments. I really love how well these two work together. So yeah, Vector gives them their orders. They need to fan out, gather survivors, and bring them to the docks. And even with zombies surrounding them, they all huddle in to do a Team Chaotix shout, and man, I am hyped. Let's go, boys. We see these gents contain zombies and help out citizens, only to have Vector swarmed on all sides. But our glorious godly Gator isn't going to go out like a coward. He puts up his dukes and is rescued at the last second by Sonic the Hedgehog. Kind of forgot you were a part of this book, but, welcome, Sonic, or whatever. Yeah, so Sonic is here for the assist, reminding Vector and the reader that even though he's infected, his speed keeps it at bay. As long as he doesn't touch anybody, they'll be fine. And the two heroes part ways with Vector telling Sonic that the next time Eggman loses his memory, he's getting locked up. And this will be the most mild of dress downs Sonic is going to get from his friends for being too lenient on Tinker. We then shift our attention back to Espio and Charmy, leading people towards the docks until it's discovered that among the survivors is an infected, this color variant Tangle. Okay, so it's not actually Tangle. She's not actually given a name, but I'm going to go ahead and call her Karen because she's being selfish and putting the safety of everybody around her at risk. She's got a silver booger that she can't wipe off her arm, and it's grossing everybody out. She begins to panic. She doesn't want to be left behind. And Charmy and Espio pause. This is a very morally confusing situation. They're not sure what to do. But our boy Vector comes in and makes an executive decision and slams down cars all around her to cut her off from the rest of the group. And she's freaking out. She's scared, and who can blame her? But she's gonna infect everybody else. Social distancing is a thing, Karen. Now you're stuck in a car cage. Charmy is real upset with Vector because he's a stupid idiot baby bee. Maybe just listen to your reptile daddies on this one, buddy. We spend the next couple pages with Sonic, who points out the rescue shuttle has arrived, and then just goes and runs off the infection. This really eats up more panels than it probably should, but it is here to let you know how much of a handicap Sonic has in this situation. Aside of not being able to touch anybody, and while yes, normally that is no good, his speed could rush survivors out of danger much quicker if he could just pick them up and get out of it. That's not an option, and outside of that, he always needs to keep moving. Sure, already being infected means he can make direct contact with Zombots, but as we will find out a little bit later, the more contact he makes, the faster his infection spreads. And in turn, he needs to stop and just zip off somewhere to run this stuff off. But yeah, I don't really think we needed 3 pages dedicated to just watching him run off somewhere, but I guess his name's on the book, so gotta hit that quota. But that said, I've gotta take a moment to once again appreciate how smart this book is when it comes to writing a video game character. I'm not about to tell you that Sonic the Hedgehog is the cream of the crop in terms of all of comic book storytelling. But in terms of talking about a franchise based around a video game, they do a pretty brilliant job here because they keep coming up with characters and concepts and situations where I would love to see interpreted in a video game. We've talked about Tangle and Whisper, potential boss fights with these new bad guys. Now, when I read stuff like this, I gotta say, the Sonic infection angle, that would be really cool in a Zombot video game. It makes me think of trying to build up speed in Sonic CD to travel through time. I get that it might be an annoying gimmick for an entire game, but kind of like Majora's Mask, having to be under these very specific parameters can either make or break a game for you. I feel like if done properly, Sonic having to run down his infection while keeping track of how many characters he's running into, I think all of that could play into a brilliant set of mechanics. And we have seen this through literally every story of IDW Sonic so far. It tells good stories that not only make sense in Sonic's universe, or at least the little vague universe that we can be provided with thanks to the games, at the same time incorporating their own ideas because these are fans and you can tell, and I just appreciate that. Well, that's enough of a distraction from me and from Sonic as we turn our attention back to the Chaotix who are guiding survivors into the docked shuttle. Charmy is taking a head count and deciding that there just aren't enough people here. Decides that now that these people who are safe are where they need to be, he's going to go back and help the rest. Starting with Karen, who is stuck between all those cars. And he's doing this because he's a stupid idiot insect. Disobeying direct orders from Vector, Charmy rushes back to the pin Karen and, would you look at that, she has turned into a Zombot and then grabs Charmy, who is then dragged down to be swarmed by Zombots, screaming for Vector and Espio to come rescue him. You guys remember that one time I made a video about all the horrible ways Charmy has lived life through all of these different canons? Some of you in the comments were wondering, where's IDW Charmy? Are you going to talk about IDW Charmy? You seem to have missed out on IDW Charmy. Well, no, folks, that was intentional. I didn't want to spoil it because we had not yet covered it in Sonic's speed reading, but we are now. Sure, this isn't brain damage or losing his entire royal family, but there's a new canon for Charmy to exist in, and in turn, there's a new chance to make him suffer. He has now become the very first member of the core Sonic game cast to become a victim of the Zombots. Right as things were really kicking off, he's just taken off the table. That sucks, man. And no, he's not getting ripped apart, but this is clearly a visual nod to those old gory zombie movies where you get swarmed, they get torn apart. It's just, oh man. And he's so scared and he's screaming for his
Chunky Monkey Fangy.
Oh god, man. This bug can't catch a break. Oh my goodness. Now, one could argue that he's acting a little bit out of character to help further the plot along. He's clearly seen the danger of the Zombots, and he flat out ignores Vector to go run back into the action. But it's not like we have that much to go off in terms of the games, and they did build this up quite well through this issue. So
Hey,
I didn't
leave her
really
alone.
think it was
Come on.
too egregious, if at all.
No.
Thank goodness this is the only example I can think of a character acting
Leave her alone.
completely out of character to help push along this
I don't care.
narrative. The shuttle takes off with a distraught Vector and Espio forced to leave behind their bug. And that's issue 17. And that is the tone we are setting for the rest of this tale. So buckle up, because we're in a rough transition into a global pandemic. I also want to point out that they previewed a Ninja Turtle comic in this issue that features basically roboticized animal men. So I mean, if Sonic's not going to use it, somebody ought to, whatever. Let's carry right on into issue 18, where Cream the Rabbit makes her IDW debut. And what perfect timing to introduce the most innocent, adorable child character of the Sonic universe. I'm sure we're in for a heartwarming little tale. And don't worry, all of her associated characters are here as well, including Vector's Wabbit Waifu, Cream's mother, Vanilla, and the two Chows, Cheese and Chocola. And hey, even General's here. Their village is being overrun, and Sonic is here to track down Cream and her family to get them to safety. Iggy, meanwhile, is strategically dropping the virus in spots where Sonic is going to have to run through if he wants to hit up more populated areas to save people. And he then decides to mess with Sonic even more by instructing all of his Zombots to swarm on the Hedgehog's location. But as it turns out, the Zombots are becoming less and less responsive to his commands as the virus spreads. Starline is a bit stressed at the prospect of losing control over their Zombots, but Eggman isn't fussed. It is a virus after all, it was bound to mutate, and they're safe up in their face ship. Virus is doing its job, they'll sort it out later. And while he goes off to find something to eat, we get this really interesting little back and forth between Orbot and Starline. The platypus confides that he has always looked up to Eggman, and has always assumed that Sonic was only able to topple him because of Sonic's overwhelming power. But now that he has met his hero face to face, this has shown him that Eggman seems to be his own worst enemy. He doesn't ever plan for the long term, he just lives in the moment. And Orbot's like, yeah, pretty much. If it's not Eggman himself, it's Sonic coming in to save the day. They do their routine, they do their song and dance, and while the track lineup might change, it's still basically the same set. I also love that Starline is venting to a sentient robot free to make its own decisions and judgments, a robot created by Eggman. Like seriously, I don't think we appreciate how technically brilliant the creation of Orbot and Cubot actually are. He's venting about Eggman to an Eggman creation. That's super interesting. And also, I kind of feel like Starline doesn't have anybody else to talk to, so they gotta use somebody. And no, Orbot and Cubot are not getting their own video. I don't actually care that much. We then have a little bit of a tussle between Sonic and General, giving us a little more information while removing a potential out for Sonic with this virus. General detects the same infection in Sonic as with all these Zombots surrounding him, so he's on the attack, considering him an immediate threat since the virus has spread over half of Sonic's body. And Gemini's machine fusion technique is a no-go here. General can't control the virus, so the only logical conclusion is that he needs to eliminate the threat, including Sonic and the other carriers. But Sonic did explain to him that running does keep it in check and leave it to a robot to be the voice of reason. He can detect the level of infection within Sonic, and if it's true that running gets it under control, then Sonic needs to go and run. And Sonic tries to argue, saying that he's being a real jerk and he's just trying to help out, and General tells him to get lost and then arms his missiles. I love this robot. With Sonic out of the way, General proceeds to attack Zombots until Cream jumps in and kind of lays out for the robot that these are victims, and Gem Gem is going to have to protect Cream without hurting anybody. And while this next part might be a little over-explained for some readers, keep in mind that this is still a kid's book, and this is a fairly good lesson. I'm not sure when you can really apply it in the real world with the zombies, but still, it's a good lesson for kids, and it also provides us a little bit of background for these characters. So it all mixes in fairly well. Basically, Cream tells General that these Zombots are in control of themselves. They're being forced to do this by Eggman. And General, who is the creation of Eggman, was once forced to fight Sonic and his friends. And once Tails got a hold of him and fixed him, he's now their friend. And these Zombots, in turn, need a chance to be fixed as well. And in this context, General can understand Cream's logic. So he agrees to take a non-lethal route and starts putting some distance between the Zombots and Cream. But at the same time, the little rabbit hears her own mother scream from within their house. And with General having his hands full in Smokey the Hedgehog, teaching kids the importance of not starting forest fires and in attempt to quell zombie apocalypses. She runs off to help her mother on her own. I gotta say, I didn't really like this weird scene where Sonic runs by kids attempting to start a forest fire. I'm not sure anybody was really asking the question, why wouldn't they just set all the zombots on fire? I think this is more here to explain to readers that while Cream is a young girl, she is still allowed to go on adventures with Sonic because she's real cool, I guess. I don't know. I always thought this was weird. I don't know why you bring attention to it. Like, if it's not Ian, it's Evan in a later arc. They try to explain why Cream is hanging out with these older adventuring characters. And I guess I kind of appreciate them trying to bring logic into this, but we see through Cream's actions in this book that she more than justifies that on her own terms. I really don't need them to stop everything and
I'll put it on.
explain that to the reader. It's jarring and it's weird. But anyway, yeah, back to Cream herself. She heads back into the house and Vanilla is about to be swarmed by zombies. But the Chows come to the rescue, and unfortunately, we're not done infecting the cute flying characters of the Sonic universe, as Cheese and Chocola get grabbed by a zombie. Yep, very first issue we are introduced to these characters, and they zombify the little Chow sidekick as he waves goodbye to a crying Cream, who is being carried out of the house by her mother while Sonic keeps the bots at bay. And while the Zombot stuff, when you really think about it, isn't too different from other zombifying or monsterfying tropes we've seen countless times in other children's cartoons or comic books or just pop culture.
That one.
This one?
Yeah.
Or the story?
No. No, not that one. No. That. No. Why'd you do that?
We're gonna watch them all anyway.
This is a personalized ad. It helps.
Put them in there. They are stuck until you decide to free them. So you're gonna sit here on this toilet and think about.
New from Nerf and Fortnite, the Fortnite Compact SMG. Now you can
Cool.
discover the power. This iconic
About your actions. They put a paper towel dispenser right on top of the hand dryer. Ooh! And once the paper towels get a little too long, they fight to the death, destroying each other. I never let the paper towel get that long. This library is now selling free coffee. For only $1, you can have free coffee. Free of what? Like, do I gotta pay or no? You know, in this economy, $1 is basically free. Even the dollar store knows something's for $1 anymore. Can someone explain to me the concept of indoor balconies? Is this a dorm? What is the point of this? Who bothered building these? You know, you have a balcony outside so you can like sit outside and get some fresh air, look at the view. But like indoor, you can do like in the hallway, I guess. Maybe spit down on other guests. What a waste of time building that. Okay, but have you actually seen one of these cars in real life that have a wrap on it that's like a mirror so that they're like completely reflective? And then the sun literally like reflects off of them. You probably seen it online and it's like, whoa, I can make my car into a mirror. But like, what if somebody's like trying to merge? Oh, I just see myself right there.
Now, for Disney's Encanto, next week, the Magic House, the
Oh
House
my
of
God, all
Light,
these
with the
commercials.
bells here, with the
Gross.
steps.
And I just crashed into you because they literally cannot see your car. It's like wearing an invisibility cloak
I like
on
the
the
Nerf gun
road.
better.
The Nerf gun was pretty cool.
For these visitors who go through that. Oh, that is the closet where you keep all the naughty children. All I want to know is how. A chair out of a MacBook or a MacBook out of a chair. Apple's gonna call this the iChair Pro, starting at $2,999. This is the worst purchase I've ever made. He's wonky. What's wrong with it? I mean, you bought a diagonal cup. You knew exactly what you were getting. Me purchasing diagonal cup online. Me hate diagonal cup when it arrives and it's actually diagonal. Wouldn't it be easier to like drink from the tilted side? I don't know. I don't think it's that bad. I've seen worse. Oh, and then there's this guy who installed the lock right behind the handle. There's no privacy in this house. Sir, this is the jewelry store. We need to be able to lock our doors after we close. Tough luck, buddy. Just put a lock on the inside, maybe. This is made my head hurt. They made a slide. There's a section missing. Where did it go? It's not a slide, that's a fall. It's a trap. You're gonna slide for a hot second before falling into a face full of mulch. I hate mulch. There's just something about it. Why does the soap dispenser say ketchup? Now, I know ain't nobody putting ketchup in there. You don't need no fancy soap bottle for some ketchup. Also, who would be pumping their ketchup like soap? Psychopath, that's who.
I've not seen a symmetrical circular sink made. But nah, I'm loving it. What's in here? The toilet has another door. Then, oh wait, there's no door here. No.
Oh, it's a door that turns into two doors. Wait, did they do that on purpose? So you can use the door for the toilet or for the whole bathroom, but not the both. Pick a privacy barrier. Only one, though. Who put that there? Now, what a perfect place for a toilet. Just in that little corner under the staircase. How to perfectly utilize dead space. How do you even get there? I feel like I have to unlock double jumps to just get over to that hidden spot in the map. I would expect there to be like a hidden treasure chest or something, but no, it's a toilet. And then this one. Nah, they made a whole entire bathroom. There's no doors, but like a bathroom in the middle of the stairs. I mean, how long is the staircase? Are there that many stairs? That halfway in between there is a toilet, just in case you gotta go? There's no sink though. However, they were gracious enough to leave you some toilet paper. I like this one. They got rock climbing. To get to the urinal, this is for all you gym bros. Challenge accepted. Oh, wait a second. How do you even use this? I ain't never seen a half toilet before. Where's the rest of it? Is it on the other side of the wall? You can like lift it open? Did they just build the wall and just forget about the toilet right in the middle of it? Like, I don't know, just leave it there, just in case. Imagine sharing a poo with the person on the other side of the wall without even knowing it. So you feel a little splash on your cheeks. Like, oh, that wasn't me. Mine hasn't even come out yet. Ooh, I don't like that. Hey, they got the 64-pack of crayons on sale. Wait a second. Why are they all orange? Where are the other colors? It ain't even worth it at this point unless you're trying to color in orange. Or perhaps a self-portrait of a giant carrot. But anyways, that's all for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and make sure you turn on notifications. Click. And I just released some new merch. We got hoodie shirts, tank tops at ogwolfpack.com. I'll link it below. And subscribe to the Wolf.
Bubbles. There are bubbles everywhere. As an Expedia member, you earn points on top of your airline miles. So you can go and see even more of all the world's bubbles.
Domino's delivery vehicles are going electric. With over 100 EVs on the road today and hundreds more to come, it's good for pizza delivery and better for the
No,
planet.
it just means they're turning electric cars.
Hello, friends, it's me. And today we're going to be watching some cartoon moments that were sus. Y'all remember this episode of SpongeBob?
You twisted tongue! You will not let me!
He could have licked them anywhere else, but no. It had to be them juicy little plankton cheeks. Turn around real quick.
You twisted tongue! You will not let me!
Whoever be John SpongeBob loves the most tender and plump butt cheeks. Check those out. If I was the animator, I would do the same thing.
Copy.
Coffee, I do like coffee.
Contract, let's sign it.
Copy.
Yes, mommy. So that's where coffee comes from. Directly from the teat of thy bean. Interesting. I have to sign an NDA contract to find out where coffee really comes from. At least it's not the back door. Well, now we know the big secret where coffee comes from.
Alright, but who can resist this?
Yeah, that would hurt. A giant toothbrush being shoved into your mouth. Think the roof of your mouth gonna be sore? Madagascar knew exactly what they were doing. This is beautiful.
This is my favorite set.
I think you really have to experience
Cool.
how nice the show is going to be.
Season 1. Buy it on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K UHD. Limited edition steelbook also available.
Slap it in the stadium, right?
Is it snowing?
disappointed? Get El.
I'm glad we're in our own cabin with just guys. You know what I mean? I didn't know. I didn't mean it like that. I love chicks. I just don't want to sleep near them.
Sure you do. You know, it's 2022. No one's gonna judge you. Except those guys. But don't worry. They're on their way to get canceled. Hey, what's the banana watching? What's the banana? Oh, the banana got caught watching peeled fruit. Peeling an orange? Really? Oh, that is sus. I had the same look on my face a second ago. I'm doing a cartwheel, do a little flip, and wow! Bro, what was under there? You see them cheeks? Bro was caked up. He got a thong on too.
What the? Oh, man.
Why is he on top of the glizzy? They gonna cut him? Dang, no wonder Cartoon Network got canceled. Like, this is just filled with sussy content.
A little to the left.
I don't pretend I did not see that, or even I had no idea what was going on. Like,
A little to the left.
they just jumping on her back. You know, I can never tell which scenes from Teen Titans are actually from the show, because there are some clips that I've seen on TikTok that are not from the show, but sometimes, like, the animation is so good you can't even tell the difference.
A little to the left.
That must have been awkward for the voice actress.
And the slap those lips. Bring it in, baby.
And what lips? That was kind of smooth.
Where are you going?
That's it. We made up.
What? What? I didn't wait infinity for a dip in the kiddie pool. We're taking this to the deep end.
But I'm not a good swimmer.
Don't be scared, Finn. Lumpy's on lifeguard duty.
Hey, I thought this was a kid's show. What did y'all end up doing? You ain't going for a swim, I hope. In the mouth hole? You disgust me. I remember this is the balloon. It's trying to shove an eggplant inside. Like, you know, eat your vegetables. It's in! The eggplant is in! The Cartoon Network not having a community guideline, like, you know, it's a balloon, you can make it do whatever you want. Or if that means shoving an entire eggplant up its blowhole while preaching about eating your vegetables, go right ahead.
I wish I was sorry. I am great. I hit the street with it. Thanks, Gumball.
Did you just see that?
I wish I was sorry. I am great. I hit the street with it. Thanks, Gumball.
What? Oh, it's the balloon! The balloon was sad, and then the balloon inflated.
Thanks, Gumball.
You know how you inflate a balloon, right? Keep that little piece, put it in your mouth, blow on it. How are they getting away with this? I'm ready! That is one way to cut wood. In between them cheeks? Surely there's a better way. How are you holding this off? And he's doing this no hands. Illegal. Straight to jail. Bro went even faster. We're gonna keep going until we bust this tree in half. And some of the things on Cartoon Network were wild.
That wasn't according to that was really stinky. That was on MTV.
What was he doing? He fed her some chocolate. In what universe do you squeeze somebody to help them chew?
No, don't do it.
Don't do it, Patrick! Lock the dog! Oh! The worst punishment possible.
What a mess. My bad.
Last time I checked, Spider-Man was not in the Teen Titans.